Hello, this is MattiAce, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the reactions I have been receiving from, well, mostly from players that have a different or very different balanced opinion than myself. So now, time and time again, I get people linking me this video called Balance for Skill. It is a quite popular video that addresses some of the problems that game developers have when they balance their games. Such as what I have been part of discussing on the forum and on Reddit. So now when it comes to this balance of skill, I want to start with what this YouTuber talks about at he starts at 1:15 in his video, and basically it's about some very easy but very powerful ways of defeating your opponent. He starts by using examples of the game Tekken. Now what he brings up is that there are some ways of defeating your opponent that are very, very powerful, yet they are very easy to do, and how this will have the effect of helping newer players into the game in the beginning. But he also continues with explaining how important it is that these easy ways of playing the game are not as powerful as the more skill-based strategies and techniques. Meaning that if you want to make progress in the game, you need to improve your skill and you need to learn more advanced strategies. And this is of course with the purpose of making the game continuously interesting to players that actually do like the game and want to continue playing it after the first few weeks. So does this sound like Planetside 2? Are the easy mode weapons less powerful than the skill-based weapons? I think there are very few people that would agree with that. Think about it next time you're in a biolab and you see a wall of maxes. So now it seems to me that as we have this belief that as long as something is very skill-less and very easy to use, it is automatically going to be very popular. Which I thought they would have learned by now that that's not the case. Because we've had lock-ons, for example, the Tomcat lock-ons for ESFs for a long time. They have always been very, very effective compared to how much skill they require to use, yet they have never been all that popular because they are so incredibly boring. Another thing is that in order for air-to-air actually to mean something, it has to be for the purpose of saving the people on the ground from being attacked by air-to-ground. But air-to-ground is so weak and anti-air is so strong, there's really no reason to fly as air-to-air in order to save your mates on the ground, because you can do that by just staying on the ground, much more effective and much easier by using flak and lock-ons. And since the easier way is more powerful, there is really no incentive to fly as air-to-air, except for the few pilots that fly because they find that to be the most interesting part of the game, or because for the time being they just want to fly as variety. So now another thing that is brought up on this balance for skill is a game called Call of Duty, which I'm sure you've all heard about, and it's about the grenade launcher, also called the Noob Tube. Now here he made a what I would call a very brave assumption, saying that the Noob Tube is the reason why Call of Duty is so popular, and what a ghost town the game would be without it. Well, if it is true about the Noob Tube, then why is it that Counter-Strike is so popular and still is so popular over 10 years after it originally came out? And why is it that so many games that have the Noob Tube, just as Call of Duty, never reaches the same success? Because keep in mind, the Noob Tube is not a Call of Duty weapon only. Oh, and another thing. Call of Duty, the esports Call of Duty is only big on console, and consoles are not known to attract high-skilled players. I'm sure this is going to be raged about as well, but yeah, whatever. So now I can understand if you don't think esports have anything to do with how a game should be balanced. That's your opinion, of course. But removing skill from every aspect of the game is not the answer, because if that was the answer, then Planetside 2 would have been more than 10 times bigger than it is already. But there's another thing about the Noob Tube that seems to be forgotten also in this balanced discussion, and if we keep it to Call of Duty, is that the Noob Tube, as much as it will one-shot somebody in Call of Duty, it will also one-shot somebody in Planetside 2. However, you will with a skill-based weapon kill much faster and much easier in Call of Duty than you will in Planetside 2. Now the thing about it is that you have to compare how powerful a low skill weapon is compared to how powerful a high skill weapon is. Now in Call of Duty you probably kill with like 3 or 4 bullets, maybe even 2 bullets with some weapons. However, in Planetside 2 I think the most common is that you will kill with 8 bullets. That is if you hit within the maximum damage range and if you hit a non-upgraded enemy. Now I'm not entirely sure about the perfect statistics between these two games, but if it takes 8 bullets to kill with a carbine and 4 bullets to kill with a default weapon in Call of Duty, then a one-shot grenade launcher in Planetside 2 is twice as powerful, because you will compare it to whatever other weapons you have at your disposal. So now there are always a lot of different opinions about what is skill based, what is skill, what is difficult, what is easy, and some such. So now, as one of the most experienced pilots and one of the most dedicated air-to-air pilots in Planetside 2, it is strange to me that I almost always do better when I'm in a max or if I'm in a tank. Any tank actually, even sometimes as a gunner in a tank. And since flying doesn't really serve any other purpose than to kill your opponents, then what's the point with flying if it is so much easier and so much more effective to kill your opponents with other weapons? Or should I say with other vehicles? Now, one of the things that was brought up before we had the surface to air bonus was that there was no incentive to use anti-air because it didn't give you that many kills and it didn't give you that many points. Now as a pilot I did agree with that. That was correct, and they introduced more effective anti-air and they gave anti-air users much more points. So by just dealing damage and also by the fact that if somebody would suicide after taking damage, you would get the kill and the points for that. This did heavily increase the incentive to shoot at aircrafts, and it made anti-air far more popular and rewarding. Now it's basically the opposite. There's really no reason to spawn an ESF unless you really want to spawn an ESF because that's how you like to play the game. But in the game in itself, in the meta game, or for the purpose of trying to achieve something, you have no reason spawning an ESF in Planetside 2. Now flying in a situation like this is completely pointless. I'm able to deal a lot of damage with my Viper Lightning. I get quite a number of kills, and it has been very controversial to say that it's easier to do well with a tank than it is to do well with an ESF. The problem here is that even pilots, the most experienced and the most dedicated pilots, will do better with tanks and maxes. So how is it going to be possible for new pilots to do well if even the most experienced ones do better in other vehicles and classes? And also want to make one thing clear here. I am not a tanker. I never practice tanking. I have no intention of being a good tanker, and I don't particularly care that much about getting a lot of kills. The only times I have purposely played only to get a lot of kills has been during some of the double XP weekends. And the times that I've actually gone for as many kills as I could, I did get top of the leaderboard those few times, on Cobalt that is. Not in terms of score, but in terms of kills. I mostly don't care, but it's interesting to see how well you can do if you actually go for it. And I have had to say that it's been very little part of that was flying. Now going back to this video called Balance for Skill that I get referred to so many times, there is something he calls FOO strategies, FOO. The acronyms stands for First Order Optimal Strategies. Now the problem with these very powerful and very easy to use strategies is that people lash onto them, as he calls it, and you keep repeating these over and over again without learning the game as a whole or without exploring any other possibilities. Now this is something you really should listen to and really think about, especially the people that keep telling me to watch this video, because I actually have. And I thought about it a lot. I've compared it to Planetside 2, and if there is anything you have in Planetside 2, it's a whole bunch of FOO strategies, only that in Planetside 2 they are far more powerful than they are described in, for example, Tekken or StarCraft 2, as this YouTuber refers to. Now, one of the things that he describes as a massive problem is that if food strategies are too powerful, then there is no reason to explore other more advanced parts of the game, and you will miss a big portion of the game and the depth of the game that developers want you to explore further on as you keep playing. Now, this leads to boredom, and you quickly get tired of the game, and you try to find another game that will give you a new and more interesting challenge. Sounds familiar, maybe? Now, the problem with Planetside 2 is, of course, there's no way of really comparing skills between different playstyles, because there's no esports involved, there are no competitions, except for a few infantry scrims that are really hard to make any sense with. In Planetside 2, the bases are not designed for it, the gameplay is not designed for it, and the only thing I've competed in when it comes to Planetside 2 is 1 versus 1 ESFs, which actually is a lot of fun. It's based on skill, it's quite interesting. Unfortunately, it is a little bit hard to grasp for people that are non-pilots. It can be very hard to just watch and see the intensity of the fight or the skill among the two pilots. The same thing is of course true when it comes to tank versus tank. I have no experience with that. I mean actual dueling tank versus tank in Planetside 2, but in terms of pure balance, the discussions that I've been part of has been whether or not ESFs are powerful enough so that they need a nerf, or whether or not that those nerfs are needed in other areas. In my opinion, that has been tanks and maxes. Not in terms of tank versus tank or max versus max, but in terms of how much influence they have on the overall game. Then it's also a matter of how much influence are you allowed to have just because you are a more experienced and a better player. Is it good that a high skilled player should have a strong dominant position, or is it better if a game is more like it's described rock, paper, scissors, where the player skill is not that important, it's rather what loadout you have at the moment. Now this is purely a matter of opinion. I have my opinion, I think it should be player based, that's me. Now there are players that will argue that this is an MMO, therefore it should be rock, paper, scissors. I don't see how that makes any sense, but if that's your opinion, then you should of course argue your opinion. But another opinion that I've heard a lot of people say so many times is that it is such a strength of the ESF that it's a one-man vehicle that can do all this much that it's supposed to be able to do, while a tank is such a drawback that it's a two-man vehicle. I don't get this. How is it a drawback that we can teamwork the way we do here? And there is one thing. The guy that is with me here, he knows me from my YouTube channel. We've never spoken in TeamSpeak as far as I know. We've never talked in TeamSpeak. We don't particularly know each other's. I don't know his playstyle. And he's doing a great job. He's playing fantastic with me here. He's doing exactly what he should do at all times. And we're having a blast. Or at least I am. I'm hoping he has. So many times it has been pointed out that it's a drawback that a main battle tank is a two-man vehicle. Now normally I am the gunner for tankers that are far more experienced than myself, and many times when I am gunning for like Chun or Shuriken or somebody, I spawn an ammo sunderer and we are constantly supplied with ammo. I get a little bit extra points for it, I can provide a spawn point, and we don't have to drive that far back to resupply. Stuff like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I can of course also spawn my main battle tank if we are playing on the Terran side, meaning that the acquisition timer and the resource cost is cut in half. And speaking about cutting, I did cut out most of the infantry farming that we did over this tower, but what I want to point out to this tower is these turrets. Now these turrets are either anti-vehicle or anti-air. They are around most of the bases, and as a tanker, the anti-vehicle turrets you can handle as a tanker even without AP, but as an ESF you do not want to mess with these turrets. I guess we're not supposed to know how that is supposed to make any sense. But the thing is also that combining infantry with tanking is far easier than combining infantry with flying. And holy shit, the accuracy is bad without the laser dot thing attached. I do have that for my TR, by the way. So yes, this video became a lot longer than I would have expected, and the funny thing is I don't think I've covered half of what I wanted to say anyway, so maybe I'll follow this up sometime in the near future. So anyway, please let me know what you think about the video, about the things I've been saying, and yeah, thank you all for watching. Bye for now.